This week on A to Z Running, just how important are mindset and expectations on physiological experiences? Research has suggested that the connection is so significant that a person can literally create a physiological response to something that is not at all present. We kick off the 7th year of A to Z Running by taking a closer look at the connection between the mind and the body and what that means for runners.
Welcome back to A to Z Running, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I'm Zach. 2 questions. Is it possible to make your body experience the physiological effects of a drug without taking it?
Placebo effect.
Second question. Is it possible to take a drug but prevent your body from the physiological effects because you don't think you're taking a drug?
Ooh, interesting.
So this is what we're teasing with the introduction and some of the questions around mind-body connection. And there are some significant implications for runners in particular. More about that later. First, it is now year 7 of A to Z Running.
Woohoo!
Hundreds of thousands of streams and downloads, thousands of subscribers and followers across multiple platforms, 2,000 hours plus of content.
It's a lot of content.
And that includes all of the Zach and Andy bickering, which you get to be subjected to on
have fun.
the occasions of. It also includes, and this is the part that for us is the reason why we've continued doing it, it includes the time spent engaging directly with other runners.
Yeah.
And that's been such a great privilege and honor and joy. And that's why A to Z Running exists in the first place.
Yeah. Connecting with all of you. Another thing that I love about doing the podcast and having our different platforms, including our website, which we used to post more frequently, but we do have articles of information and things. It's for the edification, because I believe that no one has arrived. And so for us to continually be looking at research, studies, what other people are saying, and then continually improving ourselves and our system for our athletes.
Sivan Hassan maybe has arrived.
She maybe has arrived.
It's possible that
she's both hilarious, awesome, and really fast.
She might be the pinnacle. Running might never get any better than Sivan Hassan. It's possible. But we actually are going to talk about that among many other interesting things today. We've got a couple of changes to the order of things here to keep it as interesting as possible for you. But the gist of A to Z Running remains the same. We're going to share with you content that is pertinent to your running ventures and adventures. And we're going to bring to you some of the latest running news. We're going to play some fun games like trivia that Andy and Zach have no idea what it's going to be about. And so the mystery just gets that much better. And more, including things like interviews, reflections on our own racing experiences and some of our athletes and the things they're doing and all the great stuff.
Looking forward to it.
You have that to look forward to. And for those of you watching, you can even thoroughly enjoy or perhaps be horrified by Zach's new beard.
Oh.
Which is...
He started No Shave November early.
People keep saying that. I don't know what No Shave November is.
You don't care about that.
No, but,
you don't want to fall into a system.
It's not that. It's people were like, "Are you doing No Shave November?" And my answer is, "What's that?" I do not know what that is. I've heard people use that phrase before.
It's when people don't shave in November. It's self-explanatory, Zach.
But why? What's the point?
For fun.
Okay. Well, that has nothing to do with what Zach's doing, because I don't understand why people would do that specifically month out of others.
Except that you are doing it.
No, I'm doing just what I'm doing. In any event, you hopefully don't have to be too bothered by the appearances that Zach brings to the show. But you can watch, you can listen. We're on all the platforms that have all the things, including YouTube and Spotify, which might be our 2 most prominent platforms. And you can interact in all of those places. You can comment. There's ways to switch between audio or video, so you can watch it or listen to it or both. So hopefully you can find the things you need for the 7th year of A to Z Running when you need them. Mm-hmm. And now we are very excited to get things started by talking about drugs, or at least the effects of things on your mind. Our main focus for the topic today is the mind-body connection and what it means to say that our mind can influence our physiology, like can actually do something to how we're physiologically experiencing things. And none of this is a surprise because we've talked about it a lot in various ways, but we want to bring some of the reflection to very specific examples and broaden it out to some of the key takeaways for runners.
I think that phrase, mind over matter, might have more truth and scientific backup than we thought.
Or at least mind over certain physiological processes.
Right.
Which could be the implication. So let's talk about two studies in particular that provide some catalyst for this further reflection, because this is how these things go. Someone finds a really interesting result in a study, and then other people say, does that mean, and fill in the blank. And so we're going to start with this drug study, which was a really interesting one. So this one conducted a study of psychedelic substances and whether expectations produce physiological experiences. You already know where we're going with this. So what they did is they gave a whole bunch of people placebos and told them they were psychedelic drugs with a list of side effects and here's what happens when you take these drugs and all of those kinds of things. How do you think the people behaved in the study after taking these placebos?
I mean, I think that they thought that they were taking the drug and then therefore had symptoms.
Certainly. Now, that's not too surprising to anyone. Also, like, you can get this, tell your kids you're giving them tons of caffeine in this drink and then they'll just act crazy, but really they're just crazy anyway. And you can give them something with no caffeine and tell them it's caffeine and they'll still be crazy. So like that effect, there's a term for this. I do not remember what it is. There's a term for this where it has to do with the placebo effect, but it's not the same term as that one. But the principal point is that when people think they should react to something in a certain way, they tend to, their behaviors emulate that reaction, whether or not it was induced or just conjured by their own consciousness. However, the study got more obscure than that. So it wasn't just the behavioral side effects of the psychedelic drugs, but participants were experiencing physiological effects that shouldn't happen unless you actually had those substances, like after effects from the drugs, letdowns afterward, various things related to like hallucination and measurable psychological or like neurological interactivity that is caused by these types of drugs. Like they were testing all this different stuff and they're like, how are these people experiencing some of these symptoms? Because they didn't get any kind of drug.
That's so weird. And I wonder, and I'd like to see this further because I'm sure that they have documented this, but like if they've never experienced the effects of a psychedelic, did they still, was their body and mind still able to conjure what those psychedelics might produce in the body? Because what if you've never taken a psychedelic, how would your body know how to respond to it?
Very true. Very true. Yeah, like what paved that pathway?
Right. Like it was a brand new pathway caused by your imagination. And I'm a theater kid, so I can say this. Were these all theater kids that can like really like imagine and then put themselves in that situation? And like who were these people? Were they all students? Like, or were they, if they're younger, then maybe they do have more imagination. Does that play any part in it at all?
I do believe they're college age. And they did ask them if they've had experiences with psychedelics in the past. Some had, some hadn't, as you would guess. I don't know about any of the, like, are they theater kids? But what they did find that produces what their potential conclusion was that when a person consciously expects a physiological response, that it's possible that the body can produce that physiological response without anything that actually should cause it. So it's the conscious expectation. The mind creates the physiological effect. And that's not actually that surprising. That conclusion has been replicated in many, many different ways. And certainly drugs are one kind of way to look at that, but they've even produced things like an emotional state. Someone can induce an emotional state as a result of the expectation within a situation. You get situations where you have a bunch of women together and one of them's pregnant and other ones like have physiological effects similar to what happens
Or their
in
partner
pregnancy.
their partner can also experience the effects.
Right. So like that kind of empathetic element there.
Yeah.
And so there's some of those layers. And then they've gone further with the exercise science side of this. And we've talked about this before, where they will actually tell people, you're running this kind of pace and it should feel about like this and such, right? But they're actually going faster than that. But they don't know it. And so their body reacts to what would be like this other. So like things like that, or the opposite, which is even more distressing, where we tell you you're running this pace and it's like really, really hard and they're grinding and they find out they're going way slower than what they were told. But they just didn't know. And their body reacted as though it was something else. Yeah, so we know that has some real implications. We'll come back to some of the connections to some of our previous reflections and readings. But there's a second study I want to connect some other dots here. Oh, and by the way, before we get beyond it, the question on my mind is always, okay, so you can produce a physiological effect with a placebo if the expectation is there, but can you do the opposite? Can you tell someone, we are giving you a placebo, and it's really a psychedelic drug, and have the person so thoroughly believe that they should have no effects that they actually don't experience the psychological or the physiological rather effects of the psychedelic drug? Is that possible? I don't know. That's a pretty bad study, like ethically. So
that's a bad study.
I don't know if you should do that one. But yeah, fascinating, right? So can your mind overpower the actual physiological induction?
Well, and also my other question, it'd be great. It would be like, if the people were told this might be a psychedelic, this might be a placebo, because they were told that it was a psychedelic.
Yep.
So if there is a possibility of doubt, that's the word that I want to like kind of hone in on, is the word doubt. Like if there is doubt there, is it possible that they wouldn't experience that?
Yeah, you wonder for sure, especially if it's like someone who has experience with psychedelics, if they're far less likely to experience anything from a placebo if they know the potential that it's not, because they know what should be happening or are familiar with what might be happening in that situation. Second study, connection between stress and physiology. So now here's the unconscious. So there's a reason we did, specifically wanted to use these two studies as a catalyst here. The conscious layer, with the placebo element, you consciously believe something to be true and you can create a kind of physiological effect. But what about the unconscious element of things, stress and physiology? In this study, they looked at, and so this is a very canned approach to conducting studies, because it's a very specific context and they weren't trying to generalize necessarily, but they drew general conclusions. They looked at Division I athletes, specifically football players, and they were trying to find out, are athletes more or less likely to be injured during different academic experiences? So exam times, beginning of semesters or terms, things like that. And so they found that injuries measured during high physical stress or high academic stress or high or low academic stress manifested differently. So injury rates between high physical stress and high academic stress were very similar. So that's like, they looked at that by saying, okay, early season when they're doing like the preseason training camp and it's very rigorous, very aggressive, there's a higher reported injury rate. And then at the same token, exam periods, they also saw a higher reported injury rate. And then low academic stress period was lower, as you might guess. So within the study, what they were trying to do is they were trying to say, we're pretty sure that academic stress has the same physiological implications as physical stress, so that the body is more frail or more fragile or more prone to injury, much like it would be in a physical state of vulnerability. And that is not terribly surprising either.
It's not, because as someone who does struggle with managing my stress and anxiety, I know that things like inflammation markers, hormones out of whack, things of that nature are highly linked to my recovery abilities and how I feel and run. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's one that's been easily measured. For example, Andy's talking about when you have the I can't remember what it's called, but the thing that cortisol, your
high
cortisol levels, when you experience high physical stress, cortisol levels go up. When you experience high psychological stress, cortisol levels go up. And there's a direct link between high cortisol levels and physiological vulnerability. And so we do see that easily replicable in many different ways. I think what's interesting with this particular study was that they were basically trying to say injury rates being high or likely to be high during high academic stress times suggests that we might want to do things a little bit differently during high academic stress times, or when we're under high cognitive stress. There's one confounding factor here, though, which they didn't really spend any time on. And this is an example of a study that was looking for a particular thing as opposed to looking at all the information, because they didn't talk about the fact that exam periods are also, in this case of their study, very close to playoff times. And so the level of importance is much, much higher in terms of what athletes are doing. And you're going to see an increase in things like injury rates during this time for two reasons. One, because high cognitive stress because of the importance of the competition, and players tend to play harder the more important they perceive a thing to be, which is actually one of the concepts we're going to talk about in a moment. So I don't think that this study shows us anything that's terribly surprising, so I'm not worried about some of those confounding factors. But what is abundantly clear, and Steve Magnus shared this study in his newsletter, and he reflected himself that it's very likely that we miss the implication here in terms of running, because what we tell ourselves in a situation like this is that I should be aware of when I'm under significantly higher stress, cognitive stress, and I should never pair high cognitive and emotional and relational stress with high physical stress. So I shouldn't do my hardest things in training when I'm also doing my hardest things in other parts of life. That's the basic gist of what I take away from Magnus's words. There's a good wholesome approach to training that takes into account, if we are moving this week, I'm going to reduce my overall volume of running a little bit, or I'm not going to do that really hard workout that I was planning to do on Wednesday because this is moving week. If my child is being born, I'm going to make an adjustment. Actually, that's one from me. The week that one of our sons was going to be born, Andy was being induced, and so we were already in the hospital and just kind of waiting for it, and it wasn't anywhere close yet. They were like, yeah, it's going to be a while, and so I went out for a run, and she was in the hospital, and like a couple blocks away is an indoor track at a YMCA, and I was like, I'm going to go do a workout because I might not get a chance to do a workout, like a harder effort run, for a little while here with the new baby. And so I did, and I hurt my back. And I've never hurt my back before. That's the first and only time to date that I've ever hurt my back running. And so, figure that out, right? How does that happen? Well, that's probably not the best time to try to do a hard effort.
You might be getting into this more later, so I apologize if I'm jumping. But we talk a lot about framing stresses in a positive way, right? But even if you frame in a positive way, although that is beneficial and that is good, and I recommend doing that, it still is stress. And so it doesn't take away the need to adjust the physical exertion as well. And I've realized that because I think I may have mentioned on the show before, I was in a performance type of job, and I loved it. I thrived on it. It was enjoyable for me, but it was high stress because there was travel and I was on my feet all day. And also I was performing, so I needed to be on mentally and energy wise. And that was what I had framed as good stress, but it also had deep implications on my ability to train and to recover. And I didn't account for it the way that I should. And I got myself into kind of a hole physically. And so I do think and that's why I brought it up right now. We talk so much about reframing stresses in a positive way, but we still need to see them for what they are, their stresses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's an implication here on race day considerations too, which I'm saying this now because I didn't specifically write a note to talk about this in the mindset section in a moment, but if I forget, now at least we've addressed it. But the more stressful the experience around a race, the more likely it's going to have a physiological effect on our actual performance. And so that's why there's so much to be said about trying to reduce as much stress as possible surrounding your race event, your goal event. And so there's challenges when you're doing something like traveling for a race, somewhere you've never been, internationally potentially. When you're doing things like planning other elements around the race, like a trip with family and kids are involved and some of those kinds of things. Or even then taking into account just how much pressure are you putting on yourself for that performance. Because the reality is the more level of concern you have about the event, the more potential, it doesn't mean that it will happen, but the more potential for stress-induced physiological effects like cortisol levels, inflammatory responses, and that kind of thing. And so now, for runners, we're going to say things like, well, what do you want from me, Zach? I care about the race, and I'm a little bit nervous about it. What can I do? There's some considerations, certainly. And amongst them are, at a minimum, trying to build a healthy mindset before we ever get to the race day experience. And so sometimes that means like practicing race day experiences, like doing other races. And we'll talk
all
about
those things are beneficial.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. Yeah.
So we have some key considerations that we've discussed over the years that link to these principles. We want to just kind of bring them up right now to point to where some of our thinking has been informed, and then talk about our takeaways with this kind of stuff, with the mind-body interactivity. So Steve Magnus is one of the key sources. He's done a lot of research and writing and his own personal experiences around these things. The Science of Running is one of his key books that presents some of these arguments. He talks about perception of effort, how it governs our reality, not literal effort, but just the idea of how much effort we feel like we're giving changes the reality of what we're doing.
I also want to add, you've heard me say it on the show numerous times, but with Dave Hodgkinson, Run Faster Without Trying Harder, it does actually link to this, the perception of effort, because if you feel that you're doing that, something productive to lower your effort while being faster, that mindset helps with the perception of effort, and you actually feel better because your goal in that moment is to feel better, if that makes any sense.
We'll go with it. Yep, exactly. Within that, then, you have the principle of hazard score, which Magnus discusses at length. This is the idea of you have effort perception, and then you have distance/time remaining. And so your hazard score is how high of an effort you're perceiving when you have a lot remaining. That's a higher hazard score.
And the thing that I always tell athletes, and Zach doesn't understand it, but I have a lot of athletes that do. So some of you may jive with this, some of you may not, depends on your personality. But I like to run the first part of my race like I have a secret. And that secret is that I'm holding back. And so in my mind, it's got me a little giddy because I'm like, I'm holding back a bit. But that helps with hazard score. It relates. It does relate. So if you run in a way that you're like eager and you're running a little under effort, that brings you power in your hazard score.
I just get this visual every time you say that. I get this visual of this young lady in a race who's like giggling to herself, and the runner next to her is like, "What's so funny?" And she's like, "I've got a secret." That's what I think about every time Andy says that.
I know you think it's silly, but it really
it's a
does.
Bit silly in my head, but I get the point. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I do.
Continue.
Yep. So this is then Magnus's biggest point as he discusses effort, perception, and the hazard score is this concept of mismatch, which is the distance between what we perceive and what is real, as is layered into importance, feedback, like how we're feeling and how we're feeling different than or similar to our perceived effort, and that hazard score. And so when you take into account those layers, then you have mismatch theory presenting the argument for the greater the mismatch between those perceptions and those realities, the feedback and the hazard, the more likely we are to have poor experiences. That's a really bad way of saying it, but the greater that mismatch, it goes both directions, but it's not good. And so the greater the sense of importance, the greater the potential negative effects presented in this theory. And that's where we get into things like, runners say all the time, like this race was just kind of like it was just a fun thing I wanted to do before my goal race. I was very low key. I was really relaxed and I just crushed it. Like had a great day. And then goal race a week or two later, I was feeling great, had a terrible day. But the pressure I'm putting on myself or like those kinds of things, that is a very real phenomenon. And unfortunately, it's also kind of predictable in the sense that when I am putting myself under more significant stress or my level of importance that I'm placing on something is so high, I'm creating the potential for much greater negative effects. But I'm also creating the potential for higher positive effects. And that's what we start to find when we get to the opposite side of that psychedelic drug study, which is that when I place a higher importance on a thing, I am able to produce a greater physiological exertion, you could say. So like that's where they test maximum muscle contraction. You tell somebody that if they can squeeze the thing to a certain degree, like get the reading to say something, you tell them, if you can get it to a certain degree, we'll give you $5. And then you tell a different person who's squeezing the exact same thing, you say, if you can get it to the same degree, we'll give you $500. They're more likely to get it every single time because the level of importance seems to be able to produce some kind of increased physiological response.
Simply, the term that's often used is rising to expectations, living up to expectations.
It's self or other imposed, yeah. So what we have to do in our minds to grapple with these concepts, and this is where we're going to talk about our key takeaways here, we have to be able to be the kind of person who can produce accurate physiological effects, who can perceive accurately the experience I'm having, and who can overcome, in a mental sense, the gap between perceptions and reality, such that I am not overwhelmed by the less than ideal reality that I thought should be different. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about a few areas that we think make a difference. Our mindset matters, and the mind frames that we're bringing into it. That's what Andy was talking about. The story we tell ourselves, which is a piece of the puzzle in mindset, and the story we tell others, the public story. And then lastly, what we do in terms of trying to actually exercise rehearsal within these kinds of things, how we train. And I think how we train matters. And this is where I'm actually going to start with the end and then we'll come back to it. But how we train matters because it is simply a fact that if I train based off of, let's just talk broad strokes. If I use a watch in training and I'm paying attention to my pace, my heart rate, my distances, and all those things, and I'm comparing data day to day, I am significantly more likely to be influenced by what those numbers say because I'm attaching meaning to them, whether or not it's prescriptive. It could just be descriptive. I could just be looking at it after the fact, and it's a curiosity. But because I know I'm going to see those numbers, then when I'm exercising the effort, when I'm exerting the effort, I am basing at least some amount of my decision-making on those factors, the numbers that I'm going to see later. If I never have access to them, like there's no way for me to ever know how fast I'm running on a training run, it suddenly no longer has any effect on, what that number might be has no effect on what I'm choosing to do and how I'm exerting because I can't know it. And so if I train without a watch, for instance. So there's a principal point we can get to in terms of training approaches. We're going to come back to that. That has a lot to do with the kinds of mindsets we're aiming for and some of those other elements. So we're just going to spend a moment on each of these. In terms of mindset, the way I think about running myself and all of that, it influences my physical, my mental, my emotional, my spiritual experience. When I think about running as a certain kind of thing versus another kind of thing, I have a different experience as a result of that. We would suggest that mindset involves prioritization, that running is not the most important thing in your life. no matter who you are. You could be a professional runner listening to this right now. Running is not the most important thing in your life. If it is your occupation, it's more important. For most of us, it's not our occupation, and therefore it's actually fairly low on the totem pole. Now, it's important for me to always remember that, to always hold that in my mind, because it's very easy for me to attach too much weight to insubstantial things or not as substantial things in reality. And so it's appropriate for me to identify that. It's a good exercise to go through. What are the important things in my life? List them out. And it's got to start with the important people in my life, at least above running, and my occupation's probably above that, and some of those kinds of things. So, okay.
Statistics show that you all have likely experienced having running taken from you. And I feel that that is an appropriate time to assess what life looks like without running, and where your passions lie, and like what your family is like when you're finally home and all that time that you weren't around, and like, oh, now I'm home. Like, what is the rhythm of this life, and what parts do I need to engage more in? It's a good time for a reset and a recheck of that mindset. And we do talk about framing things a lot. I think that challenge can become an opportunity for figuring out what those priorities might be. So if you're in a season of injury right now, then this is a good opportunity for you to take an assessment. But as statistics show, all of us have been injured who are listening to this podcast at some point to various degrees.
True that. So what you arrive at, I think what you're getting at too, is that you're when you're holding these priorities, then on the one side you are making decisions to keep priorities in balance, and so you fundamentally are not likely to regret making decisions to maintain that appropriate balance that might mean sacrificing some amount of the running aspect of it. And so on the one side, I'm less likely to regret things like I have to miss a run or have to miss a workout. Well, it's deliberate because my other priorities have to take a precedent in that moment. But then also the principal point of all the good things that I attain in my running experience are not solely dependent on the running piece in that puzzle. So like people will talk all the time about, my social relationships. Like I've made a lot of great friends, and most of the people I spend most of my time with outside of work and family are my running friends. Like we hear that kind of thing quite a bit. That's great. You can still spend time with those people without being able to run. Not that, of course the running helps with that. We get that. In the same token, health and well-being, like physical fitness. People tell us all the time, running is a pathway to me being able to be healthy. It has helped with that immensely, and that's great. But there are many other things that can help achieve the same ends if running were not an option. And so like as we go through this, we're not saying you should probably give up running and find other things to do. We're not saying that, but we are saying the mindset that allows me to see what the picture is in clarity and what place running has within that picture, that's very important. Here's some of the considerations we encourage runners always. One is seeing running as a result of my discipline. And so the performance potential, those types of things, my discipline in how I am going about this running thing is what produces the desired results. It's not like just a fluke accident that I was able to be fast or not fast, on a certain day. Seeing myself as the controlling agent. So it's not, I can't do that because I have to run. It's I choose whether or not I'm going to run and what ramifications that has. I control that thing. Running does not control me. And we need to be able to get to the point where that's true at an emotional level too. Because as Andy said, you're probably going to be hurt. Many of you are hurt right now. And if you're not, or you haven't been, you probably will be. And it might be sometime soon.
That's such a sad thing.
But that's the principle of injury. Statistics are clear. They certainly don't lie as much as statistics might lie. Statistics on injuries are clear. It's very likely. So what's amazing to all of us as runners is we get hurt and it's so difficult. And in the emotional reaction, like I'm so disappointed. And I think it's possible for that to have less of a negative effect on our lives. I think it's possible, but we're not suggesting that you shouldn't be sad when you get hurt.
Right. You're allowed to feel the feelings for sure.
Yeah. So the mindset as a broad concept is influenced by a lot of these things.
I would like to plug the episode Vision, the Vision episode. What was it called? What was the whole title?
I don't remember exactly.
Something with vision in it, and it was not that long ago. I recommend it because it's super practical in outlining what you want to get from running and being very clear about your missional statement as far as what you want running to bring to your life.
Yeah, we actually went through a whole process, and then we have a resource on our website at AtoZrunning.com that actually I think the resource is AtoZrunning.com/get-vision, and that will allow you to kind of go through a guided vision setting process. That
I love practical stuff, and it really was helpful for me.
We did it on air with Andy. She didn't even know it was coming.
I didn't.
That's cool. So as we think through mindsets, there's a couple layers beneath or within that are very important. And it's the stories that we tell ourselves, stories that we tell others publicly or outside of ourselves. So what I tell myself about my efforts and my decisions affects my capacity to achieve desired outcomes. And so good examples of this are things like the mantras out there, right? You like tell yourself you can do it, like the little train that could, and you are more likely to actually be able to do it by doing that. Now, there's a line in the sand somewhere because they also find that it backfires. If I'm telling myself I can do something that I really can't, that can actually have the exact opposite effect.
I'm going to rephrase that for you. It's not can't, are not able to yet.
Well, also, it could objectively be
well, if I said
can't.
that I was going to be as fast as Ellie Kipchoge.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Sifan Hassan.
Yeah, we are not Sifan Hassan, not
but
one of us.
I do like the thought maybe you're not ready yet and you want to do this thing. Sure. You're not ready yet. I don't like the word can't. I don't like that word.
Yeah, but a good example is you want to run a certain time in a marathon in 3 months, and let's say that time to produce that would be 9 minute per mile pace. And so then tomorrow's training run, you're telling yourself, I can do this because I know I can run that time in a marathon. What is 9:30 or what is 9 minute pace in a marathon? It's like just under 4 hours. So if that's true, and you can run just under 4 hours, that doesn't mean that you can do it easily today. And so that's an unrealistic mantra, potentially. I'm not saying it would be for sure, but potentially. But in reality, persistent truth when directed internally is what cultivates wise perception, wisdom. Persistent truth. And so you take the true things, the things that are true no matter what, and that's what we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves things like I can be strong, like I can push hard, I'm
doing the work.
Yes, I'm putting in the work. So like the things that you tell yourself, measure them against objective reality and what is true, and it cultivates an internal sense of capacity and capability, as opposed to the less objective or clear types of things.
One that I love these days is I can be uncomfortable. I'm good at being uncomfortable. I feel like that's a really good one for your races and also those harder, longer workouts.
Yeah, right. Now here's the catch with this. You can't lie to yourself. It's not possible. Well, people will tell you.
Yes, you can.
People tell you can lie to yourself. But here's the point being made. It's not fully possible to lie to yourself because at some level you know it's not true, whether it's conscious or not. You can't tell yourself a lie that you already know is not true.
But you can be delusioned.
Oh, yes. And
believe things that aren't true.
I'm not saying that's not possible. Disillusionment is certainly. But so what ends up happening is you try to tell yourself something like in the form of a mantra. So Andy said, I'm good at being uncomfortable. What if you really, really don't like being uncomfortable and you know it, and you try to tell yourself, I like being uncomfortable. Well, but you know that you don't. It would actually have the potential opposite effect you desire.
So you find something true.
Right,
I'm getting better at being uncomfortable. I'm stretching myself today. I am challenging myself to be uncomfortable.
That's the difference. So thank you for giving the good example. I'm good at being uncomfortable may be true for you and it may not be, but saying I am getting better at being uncomfortable. I'm pushing through the challenge right now. Those are the things that are, when we say telling ourselves a true story. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. And it's important to identify those kinds of reflections and then be deliberate about them, because the reality is you're telling yourself something, regardless of whether it's on purpose. You're telling yourself something like, oh, this really feels awful. Don't let the thing you're telling yourself be something that's going to harm your goal, your vision, your intent. And so be deliberate. And then here's just kind of a caveat. You tell yourself things like who you are, what you are, why you do this thing. Those are the kinds of things that can often lead toward the better thinking. So within that mindset, the part that actually is even the most convoluted currently, I would say, based on the internet and roles of social media and those types of things, is the public story. This is very challenging because it's kind of like, if I'm going to participate in this scene, social media and public sharing, then I'm going to introduce some challenges, no matter what, no matter how I do this. So we want you to think about that. We want it to be a consideration. And the one important thing to say is security and significance, like my own personal security, my own personal significance, when found in public approval, is a straw hut built on the sand in the immediate path of a hurricane. It is not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's simply because people say hurtful things, do hurtful things, and sometimes it's on purpose and sometimes it's not. But the reality is people aren't going to be what we want them to be when we want them to be that all the time.
And to be quite frank, people are flawed. And so they look at your goals through the lens of their own self-perception. And so while it can be overcome and you can have genuine friendships with people, genuine encouragers in your life, it's possible that you're not receiving the affirmation or encouragement from a friend because they have their own insecurities and flaws. And so there needs to be just grace washed over all of it. Grace washed over yourself and your own insecurity, and also on the insecurity of others. And that doesn't mean that we avoid community or sharing, but it's important to not gather our security and significance from another person because, again, that's mismatch theory. They're not going to ever be able to give you yourself. That doesn't come from them.
No, in fact, there is only one person who can tell us about ourselves without the filter of one's own perspective. And as far as I'm aware, he's not actively using social media. But I could
He's
be
talking
wrong.
about God.
I could be wrong. Okay, so what it comes down to, that was so good, Andy, though. That was so good. That it's not, don't assign malice where malice is not due. Everyone looks at everything through my own sense and perception. I can't see it any other way. That's the limitation of humankind. And so there's going to be flaws in the experience as we interact with each other as humans. So
can I share something real with me? Okay. So there's another side of this, because saying your goals out loud is a very good thing. And we've talked about even studies saying, like, when you say things out loud, you're more likely to do them, things of that nature. Well, there have been times that I have just really kept it to myself because I don't want to let people down. I think I have the power to let people down by not fulfilling something that's my own personal goal, which is just, I understand, like, when I say that out loud, it seems silly, but I know I'm not alone in this. And that's why I feel it's important to have vulnerability on this show so that we can all work through these things together and know we're not alone. But I would prefer to sandbag and say that I can't do things that I really can do, not intentionally lying, but also just in a self-protective way. Mm-hmm. And then also not sharing my goals sometimes because I'm afraid that people will judge my goals. I'm afraid people will scoff at my goals, think that I think I'm better for some reason if I have a goal that they think is too lofty for me. All of these things that come from me trying to get my security from the outside. And so and not getting it from who I am as a created image bearer of God.
And so this challenge of trying to manage other people's expectations of our experiences, this is the archetypical reality of social media. Everyone is trying to tell a certain story that they want other people to know. I'm not suggesting that everyone's like putting on the rose tinted glasses and trying to like make everything look wonderful, because a lot of times it's actually the opposite. Like you want empathy. We as humans want empathy. And so sometimes we share the hard things to help generate empathy, whether it's for me or it's just more general than that. But my principal point is we're trying to tell a certain story when we're sharing things publicly, and there's no way around that. And as such, we have to also remember that we don't, the best way to say it is social media software is literally the algorithmic incarnation of a Dementor in Harry Potter. So you know what a Dementor is. It sucks happiness out of the world, or in this case, out of a person, and ultimately tries to suck out their soul. Well, that's what social media algorithms are doing by design. And so not because the people who made them are trying to ruin the world.
Or the people that are posting aren't genuinely trying to help people or be an encouragement or share
yes.
real things that are going on in their lives.
Right. But what the algorithm is doing, the algorithm was designed to try to get people to spend as much time looking at this stuff as possible. And the algorithm has discovered, this is entirely not conscious. And so it's you can't assign blame anywhere except for the fact that this is the world we live in. The algorithm has discovered that people are far more likely to look at things that make them angry or fearful. And that's it. You make them mad, make them fearful, or just any kind of strong emotional reaction. And so the algorithm's going to show you things, and it's not going to show you things based on those priorities principally. And what it amounts to is, even if I'm trying to tell a complete, open, and honest story on my social media, people aren't seeing that whole thing, and I'm not seeing the whole thing from them, and it's causing problems. So there's a lot of concern that surrounds those kinds of things. But that's only one layer, and we want to really focus on the concept here. The story that I am trying to tell when I talk to others does matter. And this, Andy was saying, like, you know, if we're trying to manage others' expectations, the reality is, and Andy would tell you this, she probably doesn't want to tell you this, so I will say it in general words, but the people who tend to cause Andy the most harm when she shares these things are the people she trusts the most, who care the most about her, like the guy sitting right next to her. And this is kind of just a fact of humankind, which is a stranger has a lot less capacity to do something hurtful to me than a person that I really love and care about. Mm-hmm. And yet, the people we should be able to trust the most, we really love and care about, don't always come through for us. And so once again, we go back to that original thing, like we're going to hurt each other. And so being aware of that also helps me contemplate what I'm trying to do with the things that I'm sharing, how I'm sharing them, when I'm sharing them, where I'm sharing them. And I need to understand the effects that kind of stuff has on me. Being slightly less than honest, right? You post a run on Strava and you say, I felt terrible, except actually I felt only a little bit worse than normal, but I ran really slowly, and I don't want to make sure that people know that the reason I ran really slowly is because I felt so bad, but really it was not that bad. But, you know, how about things are really finally starting to click because it was just this good day that day, and I felt better than normal, but actually I probably pushed a little bit too hard, but I want people to see that and think, oh, yeah, now we're on a roll, and it was a bad day, even though it actually was a fairly normal day, but it was slow. All those things that I do to try to manage your expectations when you see my feed.
I'll give another personal confession. I think that it's helpful to like hear people share from their own deep, dark nasties. So when I used to be on Strava, which I'm not anymore, but it's not because I think that it's completely garbage like Zach, but I like it. It's just I don't find that right now I need to have everything so well documented. It's more about how I'm feeling each day, which is the most important thing. But when I used to have days that were workout days, I would write in my head. I'm like, oh, I'm having GI distress. Like I'd almost like write my caption of my Strava post. This was in the early days, and I've improved since then, and it's been a process for me of trying to overcome that. But you don't want in a race to already be coming up with your excuses to why you didn't hit the goal or why you didn't run as well as you wanted to run. And then guess what? Where we practice that? We practice that in our training. So if you're writing in your head your excuses during the run, it's not even done yet. then you're practicing those excuses for your race, which we don't want. This is a practice of negativity. And so I would challenge you, if that's something that's going on with you, first of all, like, I'm sharing that shame. So you're not alone in that. But then also, I would challenge you to change that thought process and maybe just avoid for a while writing any captions at all, if you need to take a step away.
I like that as a very clear takeaway here. That like captioning the experience kind of thing. The reason I do that, it's a kind of like sensationalist kind of approach to, like, I'm trying to create some kind of sensation that associates with what's happening here. That can be very dangerous. It can be very dangerous because I'm creating the reality based on a perception that may or may not, in fact, be a true thing or fully true. So there's a lot going on here. I think then the big point to all of it is how we go about training, how we go about cultivating these kinds of mindsets. And certainly you can agree or disagree with anything that we've said so far, but we would encourage trying to cultivate strong mindsets, internalization of the things that we're doing, and a training approach that allows you to achieve those ends you most desire to achieve effectively. Mm-hmm. And so, okay.
I was going to say, going back to the beginning, beyond the mindset part of it, stress on the body and mind is stress. Yeah. No matter how we frame our mindset, it would be less. But when we're going through a really hard week at work, or just if we're moving generally, you will want to physically decrease the stress on your body because you're having stress in your home or work, wherever. So even before we discuss this mindset piece, I think it's important to say there is a physical, we know that there is a physical correlation. So we do want to actually reduce effort or volume slightly in that week.
Right on. So when we talk about training approach, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this right now. We're just noting the kind of thinking behind it. And so healthy mindsets, setting the context for wise internal stories, not being driven by the public story. There's a few implications. One is get off Strava. Oh, I did. Okay, so say you're not going to get off Strava. At least stop wearing a watch. Here I go again. Look at Zach. Okay, Zach, stop it. You're being annoying. There are things that you should be thoughtful about if you're going to use those kinds of things, and be careful with that thoughtfulness, because most of us are going to just compromise somewhere along the process. Like, we know we could be doing something that would be a little bit better for us, but we're going to choose not to because that's beyond how far we want to take it. We're going to compromise somewhere. And so think through it. Don't let that just be something incidental, but be deliberate with it. Certain things do make this kind of dynamic harder. A good example is strict adherence to a static plan. Here's my plan on paper. I'm going to do this no matter what. That's not the kind of training approach that helps cultivate the right mindset, mind-body interactions we're discussing. Something a little bit more flexible. Understanding what I'm trying to get out of the training, or understanding what I'm trying to do in the training, and then being able to make decisions, like Andy was just saying. There's times for running harder and there's times for not running harder, and being able to make decisions based on those kinds of things. And so the plan might say to run 10 miles today, but it's going to be a 4-mile day because that's what it needs to be. Those kinds of considerations. And then that whole watch-based prescriptive approach is just very dangerous in terms of training physiology. Telling myself for this run I need to run this pace is very dangerous for this kind of thing, because there's too many things that confound my potential to run that pace and get the physiological adaptations out of that run I was supposed to get because I ran that pace. Maybe it was a little bit slower would have been the right adaptations. Maybe a little bit faster would have been the right adaptations.
And just know, are you talking about the watch specifically?
Yes.
Okay. Just know that you are not always getting a proper reading. And so all the recommendations are based on flawed data. It is.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, I was with one of my friends the other day, and her watch was telling her a very specific pace to run for recovery. and the duration, and it was wildly off.
Yeah.
And so it probably was because, one day she's more sweaty around her wrist and it's not getting the proper heart rate, or it doesn't know her max heart rate, or something. I don't really know exactly, but it's just wrong. And so there's just flawed information going into those recommendations, and also not a holistic approach. It does not know what you have going on in your life, in your family, and all of that. So it's just flawed.
Yeah, and there's some things going into this. For instance, the wrist-based heart rate monitor. I run a run one day, and it's a 10-mile run, and my heart rate says it was average 162. I run another run a different day of the week. It's a 10-mile run. My heart rate says it's average 163. And those runs were almost 2 minutes per mile difference in pace. How is that possible? Is that really true? Like they're the exact same aerobic contribution? No, they're not. But somehow my watch thought so, and I have never figured that one out. But it happens a lot. So there's things that make this kind of stuff harder. That's what we're talking about here. Those are some considerations. Publicly sharing all of my training makes this stuff harder. It just does. It is harder to have a good, healthy mindset if I'm publicly sharing all of my training. And so I need to be thoughtful about that.
I do think, though, that there are some really cool, generous things about sharing one's journey in something, especially when I talk about like people feeling isolated and alone. There's just, something about like, okay, this person also is struggling to do this thing or whatever. And I do think that there are people who manage this significantly better than others, just in personality. And I'm not saying that in all cases this is not an avenue.
Right, certainly. This goes back to so many runners tell us things like, the people that I have developed, the closest friendships with started because of running, or like things like that, right? Or my family, like we run together. The one thing that has, in my mind, been clearest about the social side of training, running, and otherwise is the social medias create for us a sense of that kind of stuff, but the humans right next to us are going to really make that kind of stuff true.
Yeah.
And so if you are feeling, as Andy was saying, if you're feeling like I need more of the connection, like I'm really lacking that, and I'm the only one in my family who likes to run, and I don't really know other runners, like if that's all true, find people somehow, some way, like find people to connect with the real human next to you, as opposed to the person in the social media, because I think it's going to let me down. I think it's going to be less than what it ought to be if it's not the person next to you. So anyway, that's an encouragement. That's not, I'm not discouraging the other, but encouraging the one. So lastly, as we wrap this up, here are the things that we think make all of this easier. And this is where we say this is the approach we take as we try to encourage runners in the training approaches that you do. The one is intuition, developing intuition as a runner, intuitive training. That's what I was saying earlier. Know the purpose of what I'm trying to do and execute that purpose day to day, not the run on the schedule day to day. And that's not super easy. And for most, I don't have time to like be a student of the sport day in and day out and read all the books or any of that kind of thing. How can I figure that kind of stuff out? Well, you can listen to AtoZ Running, among other things, but there's ways of shortcutting it so you don't have to feel like you're the one who has to read everything and know everything. But at a minimum, working toward that. And then effort focused as opposed to prescriptive data. The reason why effort and exertion as a focus helps us here is because it allows me to achieve that intended purpose significantly more consistently. So if the intuitive training is the goal, an effort-focused prescription is what allows me to achieve that end. And so instead of trying to run certain paces each day when I'm doing the thing, I run certain levels of exertion, and I know that I can get that desired end.
This is another thing I've never shared in the podcast, but it relates to this. There is also the component of mobility. So if you are running a prescribed pace and you're trying to do that regardless of how you're feeling, the heart rate isn't going to tell a story. of your mobility. So if, like, for instance, a lot of my injuries have stemmed from some of my joint stuff because I have arthritis and I've had hip surgeries and all these things. I should not push through immobility in order to achieve a pace. Even if my heart rate is saying I'm spot on effort-wise, I need to be intuitive and actually listen to my body, even in those cases where everything seems to be following the data dots. So that's something I never thought of before. But checking in with your body is more than your effort.
Absolutely. And lastly, with the stories that I'm telling and who I'm telling them to, be a little bit more strategic with that. Be more intimate as opposed to public, a little more private as opposed to public. Because what we have found, and this is now we're making an objective statement about the socials and all that, what we have found is that people routinely encounter obstacles and challenges that inhibit their progress because of the public social medias. That is happening constantly, regularly, and frequently. Mm-hmm. And so it may not be the case for you currently. I'm not suggesting that is, but we encourage athletes to not be posting every single thing on Strava all the time and scrolling the feeds on a regular basis and some of those kinds of things. That's the approach that we take.
Some people love to give lots of people kudos, and I don't think that that's a bad thing.
I didn't say it was.
But I do think it's important to check ourselves because the consumption of all of this is not always good for us in health. If we think about just being consumers, we have to be mindful of what we're putting into our minds, into our consciousness, into our relationships, into our running. Like, we are feeding these things. So what are we feeding them? It's always a good question to ask.
What are we feeding them, and what are we feeding?
Yeah. Ooh.
So we've given you some things to think about. And as we start year 7 of A to Z running, we just told you all the important things we have to say for the next year. So you don't really have to listen to anything else now for the rest of the year. Just listen to this podcast episode on repeat or something. But we've always appreciated that as we engage with these things, as runners, we're also people. There's so much more going on than just like going out and training. But it's nice to be able to reflect on how can I do that part of things just a little bit better too. And so we're always trying to make the practical connection as best we can, and we hope it's been the case here as you think about the mind and the body and how they are working together. With that, now we get to do something else with the mind in the form of playing some AI trivia game. Are you ready for the running trivia segment improvements? Okay, so here. Remember how this goes. Andy and Zach are going to compete in a game of running trivia. We're going to use an AI to generate the trivia questions so that there's no prior, like neither of us have any idea what this is going to be about. But furthermore, we also don't always know if the AI is going to have the correct answers. So sometimes we have to even correct the AI because, as you know, AIs make mistakes. So we're going to do that in the following kind of rules. This is the rules of the game. You can play along if you want to, listeners. The topics are randomly selected. We've got this really cool random selector thing we're going to use. That's a new and improved thing. You'll see. There are going to be multiple choice. The AI will give us 4 options. One of them hopefully is correct, and we have to guess one. We get 1 guess for each round. We'll play 3 rounds, and we're going to tally up scores. The first 1 to 10 wins, and so that takes multiple episodes. The first 1 to 10 wins, and the loser has to buy the winner a running prize.
Running related item.
That's the idea.
Yep. Okay,
so really fun stuff, right? So here is the current score right now. I have 2, and Andy has 2.
Really?
So we are
I can't believe we're tied.
We are currently tied. It is.
Zach won last time. For those of you who haven't been following along and you're new to the show.
I did. I won last time. Andy bought me turkey socks.
Yep.
Socks with turkeys on them.
For Thanksgiving turkey trot.
Just in time. So we have this randomizer. We're going to spin the wheel, and you're not going to see it spinning yourself, but we'll tell you what happens. And there's 3 categories, and the topic is the combination of all 3.
You're
this
so
is interesting.
clever.
So we
He's
have
a
a
clever
list.
guy.
We have a list of topics. It's things like road racing, ultra marathons, trail running, track and field. Like, it's all the stuff, right? Olympic history, all of that. And then you have time period. Ancient history, like the origins.
Ooh.
Recent history, like in the last 10 years, early 2000s, 90s, 80s, like all this kind of stuff.
Cool.
And then we have a focus area within that. That includes like top men's performances, could be a focus, or top women's performances. It could also be general knowledge, not related to individual performances, and fun facts or obscure facts that people might not know. So we get to see. All right, so here we go. Spinning the wheels. And the 3 categories. The topic will be U.S. track and field road racing. That's probably the most boring of the topic. Sorry, people, but
No, it's not.
I'm joking. USA track and field road racing. The time period will be origins.
Okay.
Now,
Definitely
that's
not
interesting.
ancient history.
Well, I know. I said it that way to be tongue-in-cheek.
Sure.
And the focus area will be fun and obscure facts.
Ooh, okay.
So we get to know about
I like it.
the origins of U.S. track and field, or rather USATF road racing, and fun or interesting facts about these origins. Okay, so we have to somehow get the AI to be able to produce those questions. Yeah, we'll see how it does. We'll see.
We'll see. We might have to fact check.
All right,
especially in
so
this kind of arena.
we're going to get it going just like that. So we have our AI guest here, and we are back on with our A to Z running audience for our trivia segment. Please say hello to the audience again.
Hello again, A to Z running audience. It's great to be back with all of you. I'm really excited to dive into another round of trivia. So let's get started.
Nothing like an excited AI to get started on the... Okay, so our AI friend here, this is what we're going to do. We're slightly modifying the topics so that they're a little bit more specific. And so our topic for today is going to be the history and specifically the origins of USA track and field road racing. So the USATF organization, history or origins of road racing, USATF, and the fun and obscure facts is the kind of focus area. So specifically giving us questions about fun and obscure facts on the history or origins of USA track and field road racing, road running. And remember, when you give us a question, give us 4 possible answers, and one of them is correct. Go ahead and give us the first question.
Absolutely. That sounds like a really fun topic. All right, here's your first question. In what year did USA Track and Field officially begin recognizing road racing records for specific distances like the 5K and 10K? Here are your options. 1, 1976, 2, 1982, 3, 1991, 4, 2001. Take your best guess.
All right. Okay, so we're just looking at the year they began. Do you have a guess?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go. I guessed 2001.
I guessed the oldest, and he guessed the...
Andy guessed 1976.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We guessed either the first or the last option. What was the correct answer?
Well, you both had a good range of guesses there. The correct answer is actually 1982. So that was the year when they started officially recognizing those road racing records.
Of course it was. Right in the middle is how it usually goes. All right. Thank you for that question. Give us another one. And remember, try to focus on like fun or obscure facts.
Absolutely. Let's get into something a little more quirky. Here's your next question. In the early days of officially sanctioned US road races, what unusual object did the winners sometimes receive instead of medals? Here are your options. 1, a commemorative cheese wheel. 2, a golden shoe charm. 3, a small engraved bell. 4, a wooden walking stick. Take your pick.
Okay, that's good.
Repeat it.
Can you give us those options one more time?
Of course. Here are those fun options again. 1, a commemorative cheese wheel. 2, a golden shoe charm. 3, a small engraved bell. 4, a wooden walking stick. Go ahead and guess which one you think it is.
Guess your option in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, we both guessed option number 3, which was the bell. What was the correct answer?
Well, you both had a very logical guess there, but the correct answer is actually a commemorative cheese wheel. So back in the day, some races did give out cheese wheels as a quirky prize, but great job guessing.
Of course, why wouldn't they? Oh, that's good. Okay, give us another one and stick with those fun and obscure facts. That was good.
Absolutely. Let's keep the quirky facts rolling. Here's another one for you. In one of the early USATF road races, a famous runner once accidentally took a wrong turn and ended up finishing the race in what unusual location? Here are your options. 1, inside a farmer's barn. 2, in the middle of a wedding ceremony. 3, at a local police station. 4, on a baseball field. Take your best guess.
I love it. This is good. Do you have a guess?
I do.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. I guessed the baseball field. Andy guessed a barn. Okay, what was the correct answer?
Well, those are both fantastic guesses, but the correct answer is actually the middle of a wedding ceremony. So at one point, a runner just took a wrong turn and ended up running through a wedding, which is a pretty memorable finish line.
Who was it? Who did that?
That's a great question. It was actually an incident involving the legendary runner Frank Shorter in a smaller local road race. He famously got a bit off course and ended up running through a wedding. It's one of those fun and slightly bizarre moments in road racing history.
I have to ask you, though, was that during a USATF championship event, or was it just a road race?
Good catch. That was actually during a more local road race and not an official USATF championship event. So it's definitely one of those fun but not strictly championship level stories. Still, it adds a little charm to the history of road racing.
Indeed, it does. A little charm, and
that was
is
a
the
fun
truth.
story.
That was fun. Okay, so I like this. I like this wheel kind of setup because we get.
Except
some
we got
interesting-
0 points.
Well, that's not
Kathy,
the
if you got
first time.
any, you might be ahead of us, right?
That's not the first time.
Remember, if any of you are playing along, it is fun to know like how you do on it. And we're not doing super great, so you could feel really good about sharing with us how you're better.
We have told you before that if you beat us and tell us and can somehow prove it, then there may be a prize in store for you. And so you got to beat us to 10 points, and we have a head start because we both have 2. Okay, well, 2, but no more after this round. But that's all right because we learned some interesting things, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a lot of fun.
But you notice how you have to double check them, like, but was this what we were actually talking about? Exactly.
The thing that the AI does the most often is gets off topic slightly. And so that's going to happen with these things. But also, we're probably going to go back and like fact check the AI a little bit here and there. Like, did Frank Shorter actually finish a race in a wedding? Because that seems iffy, but maybe. So why not find out? And this is just fun stuff. But we find this to be just a really nice way to engage with the obscurity around our sport, you know, the historical things and the unknown facts and all of that kind of stuff. So play along, join us as we do our running trivia segment next time. But for the moment, we're still tied at 2 points apiece, and the competition is heated. Heated, I tell you. But let's go ahead and take a break until next time and talk about the latest from the world of running. As you know, we like to begin with running news by sharing a little bit about what the A to Z running crew has been up to themselves. And it just so happens, because it's been a little while since the last time we shared with you all, a great many things have happened. And we don't have enough time to talk about all of them in detail. So we're going to do kind of like a lightning blitz down what amazing accomplishments these runners have been up to lately. So starting with Aaron ran the Margie G6 100-miler, finished second overall. Amazing. Drew ran the Capital City River Run in a personal best, second age group. Andrew and Laura both ran the Berlin Marathon. Incredible. How good. Dan O ran the Hungerford Trail in first age group. Elijah won both Midwest Everest 10K and 20K. They were like night and morning races, kind of back-to-back like that.
Kind of torture that only runners subject themselves to.
Indeed. He also did them both in course record time.
So good.
Won them both in course record time. Elijah, how good?
Lots of elevation in 2 days.
Yeah, running up and down that hill. Spencer also ran in the 20K and finished second in his age group as well. Craig ran the St. George Marathon, the Hartford Marathon, the Newport Marathon, and where's the other one, Craig? Which one is the other one? My list, I just got sidetracked on my list. And the Bay State Marathon. That's 4. Yes, 4 in 15 days. And now Craig has run 46 states in the United States.
Way to go, Craig.
Marathons.
Very impressive.
Only got a few to go. Here we go. All right, good stuff, Craig. Very well done. Jeff and Justin ran Chicago marathons. And I tell you what, if you know who Jeff is and you have a chance to hear the story, you want to hear that story. It is incredible. Spencer ran 3 different events at the Detroit International Marathon events. He ran the mile, finished 3rd overall, which is great. The next day he ran the 5K, and then the day after that he ran the marathon. Did all 3 of them, and he wasn't far off of his PR in that marathon too. Very well done, Spencer. Martha ran Run Through the Rapids 10K in a personal best time.
Woo-woo.
Incredible. Elijah ran the Detroit International Half Marathon in a personal best. Very impressive. Jake and Jill both ran the Columbus Marathon. Laura, Lorenda, oh goodness, there's so many. Laura, Lorenda, CJ, Bill, Claire all ran the Grand Rapids
and Drew.
Half Marathon. Oh, thank you. And Drew.
With me.
All ran the Grand Rapids
With
Half
my team
Marathon.
Triumph.
Yep. Drew and Andy ran for my team Triumph.
With Janelle.
Pushing Drew's sister Janelle. They were fast, blazing fast. Really good stuff. Lorenda ran a half marathon PR in that race. Joe ran the Grand Rapids full marathon as well. And then CJ was first in his age group in that half. Claire was second in her age group in that half. Martha ran the Go Blue, Go Green 5K. And Drew ran the Thumb Coast Marathon in a personal best performance after all of that. So you can see A to Z runners have been doing it.
Yeah.
And it's been really exciting. But not only that, you could do those amazing things too. All you need to do
probably
is
are doing amazing things.
All you need to do is go to atozrunning.com/coaching and check us out. No, but seriously, just really impressive stuff. And we're always so excited to be able to support runners and the things that you're all doing. It's really cool. All right, let's talk about the majors this fall. 4 marathon majors in under 2 months, or just about 2 months, I guess. And we wanted to just give you the highlights of all of them because it wraps up the 2025 World Marathon Majors season. And there's some really cool stuff going on. So we're going to actually start in the most recent and go backwards. So the most recent World Marathon Majors was New York City, and it was like fairly epic. It was pretty cool stuff. On the women's side, you had, let's see, how many? 3 previous New York City champions in this one race. Yeah, 3. All in the prime of their marathoning prowess at that. That includes Helen Obiri, who is a 3-time World Marathon Majors champion. That includes Sharon Lucchetti, who's a 2-time World Marathon Major champion. And Sheila Chepkaruri. I think it's Sheila Chepkaruri. For some reason, I didn't write her first name. But who won New York last year, the defending champion. And then add to that mix Sifan Hassan, who some might be calling the greatest distance runner of all time. Sifan Hassan, who also has 3 Marathon Majors titles to her repertoire, not to mention things like Olympic gold medals and otherwise. And Helen Obiri, who's an Olympic bronze medalist in the event. It's like, look at this roster.
It's really impressive.
So impressive. And it did not disappoint. So between those 4 athletes, 9 majors titles, and that means we're going to have a 10th at the end of this race, unless somebody else beats them. Spoilers, nobody else did. So who would you pick as the favorite? Hearing those names, like who would you say, I think this person is probably going to win this race?
I already know who ends up winning, but I guess I before the race I was thinking maybe Sifan Hassan, even though she had just run Sydney, but she's just been doing super well.
I think that's a fair bet. I still would have picked Helen Obiri, despite the fact that Hassan's been crushing it, and Lokedi beat Obiri in Boston last year, and showed that Obiri is not like the tough course champ necessarily. And I would have been right too, because Helen Obiri won the race. I know. We already knew the results when we said that, so that's probably not a totally honest assessment. But Helen Obiri did win the race. She earned her 4th World Marathon Majors title. Keep in mind, folks, the United States of America as a country has only won 6 total. Helen Obiri is only 2 shy of that. And there are others who have won more than 6 individually.
But unless you're confused, she doesn't run for the United States, even though she trains here with Dathan. She runs for Kenya.
That's not what I meant, right?
I know, but in case that was confusing.
Oh, you think people aren't sure? Yeah. Good. So Helen Obiri just on the warpath once again, and that is her 3rd New York title, right? Because she won Boston once.
Oh, okay.
And New York twice prior to this one.
Wow, that's impressive.
So there you have it. It was a 2-minute course record. She ran under 2:20 for the first time ever on New York's course. No one's done that before. And Sharon Lokedi was not that far behind, also under the previous course record, which is really impressive stuff. And then in 3rd place was Chep Kurui. Sifan Hassan did not have the greatest of her days, but still strong finish. I think she was 6th. But then behind Chep Kurui were 2 Americans, Fiona O'Keefe and Annie Frisbee, both running faster than any American has ever run on the New York City course in 4th and 5th places, respectively. That's very impressive stuff.
Really impressive. Before we move on to the men, we were doing a little bit of digging about Helen Obiri and Sifan Hassan, just kind of contemplating like goats. Are you going to talk about later?
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Oh, just how even though we've been following Helen Obiri for a long time, we tend to, I think, forget how much she was winning in track before she moved to the marathon. So it just wasn't congruent with the same timing as Sifan Hassan's last push for medals in the last few years. So let's not disregard, when we're speaking of GOATs, how Helen Obiri has been just as winning as Sifan Hassan.
No doubt. Okay, so on the men's side, just very briefly, we had a few interesting debuts on the radar. Road standout and Olympian Hillary Bohr running his marathon debut, NCAA champion and recent road race record setter Charles Hicks. He's a young one. The embattled OAC runner Joe Klecker, I described him that way because he's just had a rough time transitioning from track to roads. And now he's running his marathon debut. British NCAA champion Patrick Deaver as well. Put him on your radar for a moment here. And outside the debutantes, we had the greats. Certainly everyone's talking about the old guard. Kipchoge was in the race. He's never run New York before. Or has he never?
No, he's trying to get his stars now.
I know, but has he ever run New York but never finished? I can't remember. But no, yeah, he doesn't have a New York finish before. And then Kenenisa Bekele, who had a rough day and ended up DNFing. But no one's putting them on the podium anymore, I don't think, in their predictions. Instead, you've got the likes of Benson Kipruto, who has 3 majors titles and 3 other podium finishes. Albert Carrier, who has a title. Alexander Mutiso, who also has a majors title. So there's a lot of talent in this field. Question is, who comes out on top? In reality, it was a very slow race, and so a lot of runners were in it late. But then it was like a final mile, who wants to sprint for a mile kind of scenario, and there were only 2 that really had that. And when it came down to it, it was Benson Kipruto, and Mutiso. And in fact, it looked like Kipruto was just running away from it, and with about a half mile to go, he was gapping Mutiso, and he was holding that gap firmly, and it just looked great. And then Mutiso just decided, what if I can go a little faster? And started reeling Kipruto in very, very gradually to the point where with about 50 meters to go, the announcers are like, I think he might catch him. He's getting closer by the moment. And he did catch him, but not quite enough. And Kipruto won by 0.03 of a second.
It was a very close finish.
Fun fact.
They both put their arms up they were the ones breaking.
Well, they're trying to do the lean.
Yeah.
Mutiso ended up 0.03 of a second behind. And that's, by the way, Kipruto's 4th title as well.
Wow.
And
And
right.
he's young.
He is fairly young. He's not like the young guns, but like Sebastian Sauer or anything, but he's been around a bit. On the other side of that, fun fact, the same exact discrepancy between first and second marked the men's marathon in the World Championship.
That's what I thought. I'm
3/100ths of a
It
second.
was so close for both, which is exciting as a viewer.
Indeed.
Terrible as the finisher.
Yeah. It was, by the way, Albert Carrier in third to round out the podium. And then it was Patrick Dever of Great Britain in his debut,
That's
finishing
awesome.
fourth. And this is New York, so it's a slow course, but he ran under 2:09, which is very impressive.
Yeah.
And then USA's Joel Reichow and Charles Hicks had a good showing in 6th and 7th as well. And then I will say, Klecker and Bohr in their debut marathons also not looking too bad. They were 10th and 12th respectively, both in the 2:10 range on New York's course, which is difficult. So we got to say, like, the U.S. marathoning scene just is getting thicker.
Yep.
Reichow having a really strong performance, kind of unheralded. Hicks in his debut, Klecker and Bohr in their debuts, and all of them looking great.
Yep.
I like it. All right, next up is Chicago Marathon, and this one only a couple of weeks ago. And we featured a world record attempt, which is always exciting, and from someone who I don't even think he's won a world majors as of yet. This is Jacob Kiplimo of Uganda we're talking about, the current world record holder in the half marathon, and going out in the first half in this race at world record pace, and paid for it hard in the second half, in particular the last handful of miles. As a matter of fact, he still ran well, 2:02:23 for a new Ugandan national record and for the win to take the Chicago Marathon title, which is always impressive stuff. This is, by the way, the third fastest national record behind Kenya and Ethiopia only, as far as national records, and the seventh fastest all-time marathon performer.
I just think that is just such a rough way to go. Like, you're running super hard, you start to hurt, then you're puking, like, because you're riding. He took a risk, he rode a line, and he tipped over that line. But he still finished so strong, so
Still won the race.
he still got the race.
Still made the money.
Yeah.
Although he would have made more money if it was
If
the
he
record.
wasn't puking.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, so that's really impressive stuff. We'll come back to what's really interesting about that here in a moment. But the other really exciting run in this race was Connor Mantz in a new American record, the first American under 2:05 in a
So
records
good.
legal race, because we all know that Ryan Hall did run under 2:05 once at Boston. But Connor Mantz, 2:04:43, fourth non-African-born person ever under 2:05. That is a rare crowd to be a part of. Really incredible performance. And we know Mantz is really talented. He's been just running incredible things all along. But think about this. That's a 23-year-old record. That record has withstood years of the super shoe generation. It has withstood many of the greatest American distance running talents out there. And what's crazy is when that record was set 23 years ago, it was the world record.
It's so cool.
It was Khalid
USA.
Kanuchi set the world record at the London Marathon 23 years ago, and no American ran faster until Chicago.
And he was there for it, too, which was cool. They had him in interview afterwards, giving Mantz a hug. It was neat.
Very, very exciting stuff. It is now the 11th fastest national record as far as...
That doesn't sound very impressive to me.
Nope, it doesn't. And that tells you something. It was the world record 23 years ago, and now 10 other countries have people who have run faster.
His time sounds impressive to me. Connor Mantz is impressive
Yeah.
to me, but the fact that we're only the 11th on the list of national records
Isn't that wild?
is not.
It's just
it's
so
exciting to me.
competitive.
Yeah.
The marathon is such a competitive
It
thing.
is.
Really exciting. Here's a few facts for you then. So when we're talking about national records and world records and all of this, 14th country to win a world marathon majors when Jacob Kiplimo did so, of Uganda. And keep in mind, the world marathon majors have been around since early 2000s. I can't recall the exact year. And so that means 14 different nations have an individual who has won a title at the world marathon majors. That's not a lot. Like, there's a lot of countries represented in these races, and out of 214 contests to up to the Chicago Marathon. That includes 107 men's races, 107 women's races. And so out of those 214, only 14 different countries have won. But what's crazy is between Kenya and Ethiopia combined, only those two nations, they have won 187 out of 214. So many.
So two countries make up 187.
Yes.
Wow.
Since I mentioned earlier 2000. It was 2006 when World Marathon Majors began.
Oh, I'll remember that because maybe that will be part of our trivia sometime.
It could be. It could be. So Kenya and Ethiopia account for 187 of those 214 performances. So that means that we're only left with 27 performances between all the rest of the countries in the world.
And then Uganda just got there first.
Uganda, that was the first. Yeah. Props to Kiplimo. Definitely impressive. USA has won 6, which is the third highest individual country.
Good job, USA.
You go Kenya, Ethiopia, 187 combined, and then you go down to 6 titles for third place.
Okay,
which is
but
United
also
States.
let's just recognize the fact that there are 2 world marathon majors in. No, 3. 3 world marathon majors in the USA.
So that helps. It does. Home court advantage, as it were. So you could say
Boston, New York, Chicago.
Yes, yeah, there are 3. Yeah, you got
just want to make sure.
That does make a difference. Yeah, but as it were, you'd say 6 for the entire country of the USA. Eliud Kipchoge has won 13 by himself.
By himself, more than our country.
Mary Kietany for women, also of Kenya, has won 7 by herself.
Yeah.
And then we just mentioned Benson Kipruto just hit his 4th, and Helen Obiri just hit her 4th this season. So, I mean, these are the way things go. Exciting stuff. On the women's side, by the way, in Chicago, Howie Fesa won her first World Marathon title for Ethiopia, she's from Ethiopia, and she ran 2:14:56.
Wow.
6th woman to run under 2:15, number 5 all-time performance.
Impressive.
Yes. If that wasn't on your radar, it's, by the way, because she ran over a 2-minute personal best, with her previous best finish being 3rd at Tokyo. So she's just on her way up right now. And it's exciting to see.
And it's also interesting to note that she was uncontested in the last 10K. She didn't have company.
Yeah.
For the closing bit.
Yeah, the tough stretch was solo. That's really difficult. Very impressive. Okay, so there you have it. Chicago. Some excitement there for sure. Before Chicago was Berlin, and I mentioned we're gonna be brief here, but we do want to make sure that we reflect on what was an incredible season of marathoning here this fall. The men's race in Berlin featured Kenya's Sebastian Sawe, and there's some really interesting things about Sawe to certainly discuss. It was his 3rd marathon and his 3rd victory. He's 3 for 3. If you're thinking, who was the last marathoner who went 3 for 3 with some majors titles in there? It was Kelvin Kiptum, the late Kelvin Kiptum. Yeah, Sawe is actually very much similar to Kiptum in terms of what has happened so far. All 3 of his marathons have been 2:02 and change.
Wow.
He's never run slower or faster than 2:02 and change. And some have said he would have run the world record, like gone after the world record in this race, if not for the fact that the race was in the mid-70s. It was hot. And he still ran 2:02 and change, and basically by himself. He won the race by 4 minutes.
Yeah, that is by himself. For sure. That's a lot of space.
So really good stuff. Now, here's what I wanted to say. Oh, by the way, it was Japan's Akira Akasaki in 2nd. Good for 2nd, when 2:06 and change. Sawe has fallen under scrutiny because he's young. He's brand new to the marathon. He's only run 3 of them in the last 12 months. So he just started running the marathon a year ago, and has won all 3 of them, including London and Berlin. So 2 majors titles. And then in addition to all of that, he kind of seems to have come out of nowhere. He was impressive on the roads prior to that, but not setting records quite the way he looks to be in the marathon. So people started saying things like, well, maybe he's a cheat and maybe he's doping, and like all this stuff, right? So Sawe took the bull by the horns, and in the last season requested from the athletics integrity unit that he would be tested significantly more often than is required. And in fact, so often that like more testing in a single season of training than I think anybody ever. And to prove that he's clean and to prove that he wants everything to be above board. No suspicion, above reproach.
That's awesome.
It is. Now, it's tragic that that's what it takes.
He has to.
Right?
It's bad that his, it's too bad.
But that being the case, now it like totally silenced everyone because it's like, okay, so clearly he's clean for this race and he still looked like he was going to run a world record if it was a cooler day. That's really exciting.
Whoever is advising him on that regard, or maybe he came up with it himself, but whoever is, it's really important and it's really good because he needs to be able to say, hey, I'm clean. There might have been people in my country who have been cheating lately, but it's not me. And here I am to show up and be the best I could be.
No doubt about it. And I think he's setting a kind of precedent too, where if there's any doubt, we have ways of making sure that there's no doubt. It's not a zero thing because there's always trickery and stuff that people can get up to, but it really seems unlikely that he's trying to cheat the system when he's trying to be tested more, that kind of thing. So yes, that was a good look and really just exciting to see his career unfolding. Remember that name, Sebastian Sawe. Okay. On the women's side, by the way, for Berlin, Ethiopia has owned the Berlin Marathon for some time, since 2018, in fact. But Rosemary Wanjiru of Kenya put an end to that with a 3-second victory over Daradida of Ethiopia. Wanjiru's second majors title. She's also won Tokyo as well. So very impressive stuff there. Mm-hmm. All right, last up, the Sydney Marathon, which was the first showing of Sydney as a World Marathon Majors. It was the debut into full induction, full status. So now we have 7 World Marathon Majors, soon to be 8. But what we got for the Sydney's first showing was featuring Eliud Kipchoge and Sifan Hassan, which was very exciting stuff. So Kipchoge mentioned he's going for his 7 stars now. He just ran Sydney in its inaugural and then ran New York. And so he's only got, what does he have left? Tokyo?
No, he's run Tokyo, hasn't he?
I don't think so. I think that's the only one he has to do.
I thought there were big banners of him recently.
I don't know.
Well, it could have been.
I don't think so.
Well, yes, he ran the Olympics.
I know he's run all the other ones. Berlin, Chicago, Boston.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking
London.
Tokyo because he won the Olympics in Tokyo.
Oh, gotcha.
That's probably why I'm thinking that.
That would make
sense.
sense.
There's banners of it. Okay, yeah. I'm putting the pieces together.
That makes sense. All right. Well, nobody really was quite confident that Kipchoge was the favorite to win the race necessarily. But in this setting, it seemed more possible because it was not a race necessarily featuring the absolute best in the event right now. And even so, it was not his day for a victory, but there was a tight duel between Ethiopians Haile Mariam Kiros and Adisu Gobena, and either one would have been a first majors victory. And it ended up going to Kiros, who got the better of Gobena in a course record and Australian all-comers record.
And for those that don't know, that means that it's the fastest in Australia.
In fact. On the women's race, Sifan Hassan just owned it. There was no doubt at all. She ran away with that one because she ran so fast. She went 2:18:22, also for a Sydney Marathon record and an Australian all-comers record as well.
Wow.
So good start, Sydney Marathon.
Yeah. And a great job getting headliners in like that. It is helpful for the sport.
Yeah. I mean, if you pay enough, you probably can get them. The question is, how much did they have to pay? Because, I mean, you did have the goats. All right. Quick recap of other important things that you really should be knowing about in the world of running right now. NCAA cross country is deep in the postseason, and it's always very exciting. We love cross country. We don't spend a ton of time talking about it because the regular season stuff is just so unimportant. Because what happens is you get teams running half of their rosters. You get top-level athletes running in one race, and then the rest of the teams running in another race. Like, it's just a really messy thing.
And there's just so much. We can possibly cover all of it.
True. But when it comes to the postseason, things start to get really interesting. Conference meets, regionals, and then, of course, nationals. And so we do like to share with you what the top headlines are. And really, there's just one headline at the moment, and it is Jane Hedengren. So you recall we were talking all about her last year as the high schooler who broke all the records. Now she's a freshman at BYU running for Diljit Taylor and still breaking all the records.
Which you might think, okay, of course, but that is not what happened with some of the other legendary runners that came onto the scene. You'll know professional athletes like Kara Goucher, for instance, Shailene Flanagan, like these women who were good as girls. They still took a few years to become the winner in college. Even more recently, we would talk about Caitlin Toohey, or who else? Parker Velby. They both were not like standouts their freshman year. I mean, they were good, but they weren't winning, right?
They weren't the favorite. When Jane Hedengren runs a cross-country race right now, everyone just thinks she's going to win. And that's crazy as a true freshman in the NCAA. Remember that the NCAA is an international contest. We have athletes from all over the world running for these schools, and they're some of the best from all over the world. Yeah. So really an incredible thing, but Hedengren's just been taking it by storm. She's been setting course records everywhere, like just blowing records out of the water. She set the Big 12 record by like 30 seconds. And the Big 12 is one of the most competitive conferences in the history of the NCAA. So that tells you a little bit of what's going on. And now we just get to find out if this is something that she can hold, something she can maintain. One thing I have to say about this, because you hear the commentators, the Big 12 commentators or the ESPN people or whoever it is, depending on the race, or I guess a lot of times it's the USATF commentators too. But they start talking about like the great work that Diljeet Taylor's doing and such, which is, of course, BYU's women's program has been incredible since Taylor took over. But Diljeet Taylor is not responsible for Jane Hedengren's current success. It's just simply not true. So while she's probably contributing positively, and time will tell as Hedengren runs for Taylor and she continues to improve, then you give credit where credit's due. But Jane Hedengren's freshman year of cross country is not great because of the 6 weeks she's been running for one coach. So it's worth noting this is a long trajectory.
It's a talent that we want
to
pay attention to.
Yep.
She's a talent.
So we'll see. All right. That said, one quick note. We mentioned Kenya earlier and the suspicions. New development in the Kenya is falling under scrutiny category. As a nation, they are now one step away from a national sanction because they've been re-added to the watch list for a number of reasons. But the key takeaway here is Kenya, as one single nation, still accounts for 21% of all current violations, doping and non-doping violations in the world. So 1/5 of all the violations are coming from one single country. And World Athletics looks at that and says, something's wrong. You're something that, as a nation, you need to do to help and fix this problem. And so that's where they charge Kenya, as Athletics Kenya as an organization, to see some progress, to make some improvements, and find out what they might do differently. And they give them specific action items. And Kenya has to follow through with these action items and show progress within a certain period of time. And if they can't, then they might face a national sanction, which would be a tragedy for the sport. It would be
so tragic because there are clean athletes that are phenomenal from Kenya. They are, as a country, they produce some of the best runners in history. And it would be sad for those runners to not get to participate because of the athletics integrity unit in Kenya not following through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next update won't come for a while because their deadline is March of 2026 to make these changes and see improvements. And so as that comes closer, we'll probably start hearing more about it again in the news. We'll keep you posted. And that's about it. There's a lot of fun things coming in terms of cross-country championship racing, high school championship running going on. Everyone's talking about the Ritzenhein family right now because they're winning Colorado. As high schoolers, you've got, of course, Addie Ritzenhein as a high school senior who just won her third straight Colorado state title. And Jude Ritzenhein as a high school freshman finished 4th or 6th. He was, I can't remember now. It was 4th or 6th. It was one of those two. As a true freshman in the state of Colorado, which is one of the more competitive cross-country states in the nation. And so it's just fun to see running royalty doing their thing. So best of luck, certainly, to Addie for sure in the postseason. I don't know if Jude, I'm assuming he's running postseason races.
I would imagine.
Too. Yeah.
Well, Don't forget where you can find more information. If you need help, there's stuff on our website. We've pretty much written about all of it, do you think? Mobility, strength, how to train, long runs. But if you want more specific instruction, of course, we also have coaching services. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.